JavaScript tutorial 1. You should have at least a basic understanding of HTML if you're watching this. If not, then I do have a 1-hour video on HTML that can get you up to speed, so I'll link to that in the description. I'm using Visual Studio Code. You can use whatever code editor you want. Visual Studio Code is free and pretty easy to use, so I'll leave a link for that in the description too. If you already know C++ or Java, then you can finish watching this video and then skip to about video 15 in this playlist. As soon as I have the rest of the videos posted, then I'll put a link in the description for the video that you can skip to. And the reason you can go ahead and skip those is because a lot of the basic syntax in JavaScript is exactly the same as in C++ and Java. For loops, while loops, switch statements, all that stuff is the same. So in this first video here, we're going to go over a couple of differences in JavaScript. And then for the next maybe 15 videos or so after, then we're going to cover all that basic C language syntax. Make sure you watch the rest of this video though, because we are going to go over some basic differences. So let's start out with some simple JavaScript. Right now I just have an index.html file. I don't have anything in the HTML file at the moment, it's just a template. Inside of the head, we're going to write a script tag. And inside of the opening script tag, we're going to write source equals js1.js. .js just makes that a JavaScript file that we're linking to. And we're going to make this js1.js file. So we've linked our JavaScript file to our HTML file, and just to make sure that that link is working, let's go inside of the JavaScript file and we're going to write some JavaScript. We're just going to write console.log. The HTML is connected to the JavaScript. So if they're connected all right, then this is going to show up in the console when we open up the HTML. So let's save both of these, the JavaScript file and the HTML file. And then we're going to open up the HTML file inside of a browser. So we'll go find it wherever it is on your computer. And open the HTML file up in the browser. And now to get to the console, we need to get to the developer tools. So if you're on Windows, you can hit F12, or you can just right click and hit inspect. And that's going to open up our developer tools. From there we can open up the console and we see the HTML is connected to the JavaScript. So this is just written to the console right now. It's not actually written on the web page. The console is pretty much just used for developers like we did right now, just to see what's happening in a program and to print little messages like this. Now let's go back to our JavaScript file. And we're going to talk about one of the main differences in basic syntax between C++ and Java and JavaScript. And it's okay if you haven't written either of those languages before. We're going to go pretty slowly. With C++ or Java, we have ints, we have doubles, we have floats, we have strings. But in JavaScript, this is a lot simpler. We can store ints, doubles, floats, and strings in any variables. So we have 3 different options for variables. We have var, let, and const. And any of these can hold Boolean values, string values, or number values. So we don't actually have to specify which type of value we're going to be holding in the variable. And for anyone who's never written a programming language before, you'll be asking, what is a variable? A variable is just something that holds a value. So right here we can make a var called x and set it equal to 12. And then if we log x to the console, then it's going to log 12 to the console. I'll just get rid of these for now so everything runs okay. So here we've made a variable called x, so var x equals 12. And we've ended our statement with a semicolon, which just tells the JavaScript that that's the end of a statement. In JavaScript, semicolons are actually optional, but we'll talk more about that after. For now, we've just said make a variable x, set it to the value of 12, and then log it to the console. So if we save this and then refresh our browser, Then we get the HTML is connected to the JavaScript, and then we get 12, the value of x logged to the console. We could also make x something like my name is Nick. In JavaScript, variables can hold string values or number values. It doesn't matter. We don't have to change the type of variable. So now we'll just get my name is Nick in the console. And we have two more types of variables. We have let and const. And these are going to be the two variables that we use most often. Var is kind of outdated. In earlier versions of JavaScript, var was the only variable that existed. But now we have let and const, and we use these most often. Because for reasons that we'll get to later, when you use var for all of your variables, things can get mixed up pretty easy. So I'll mostly only be using let and const in these tutorials. Const is short for constant. So we'll use a const if we want a variable that we won't change the value of. If you try and change the value of a const, then you'll just get an error, it won't work. So here we could say const my const. My const is just the name of the const that we've made. Const my const equals 15.5. And now we can't change the value of my const anywhere in the program, or we'll get an error. If we do want a variable that we can change the value of, then that's when we use let. So if we say let my let equals 20, then on the next line we could go ahead and change my let to 15, and we're not going to get an error because let can be changed. So we'll use a let if we know we're going to change the value of the variable. If the value of the variable is just going to stay the same, then we'll use a const. So again, we could just log these to the console. And if we save and run this, then we'll get 15.5 and 15 output to the console, because my let was 20, but then we updated it to 15. So we'll get 15.5, my const, and then my let, which is 15 right now. In the next video, we'll get into doing some operations on these variables, adding them together, subtracting them, and doing other cool stuff with them. For now, there's one more thing I want to cover in this tutorial, and that's optional semicolons. So if you've ever written Java or C++ before, then obviously you know that semicolons aren't optional in those languages. But in JavaScript, if we left all of these semicolons out, then JavaScript would pretty much just assume that we meant to put them in there. They are essentially optional. So you can save this and refresh it right now, and our code's going to do the exact same thing. There are times when this won't work though, when JavaScript will get kind of confused if you leave the semicolons out. So personally, I always use semicolons in JavaScript, and I will be using semicolons throughout all of these tutorials.